So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining NAMI Greater Cleveland today for one of our quarterly faith-based psychoeducation programs today on the topic of spirituality and the practice of gratitude. As you may have noticed already, this webinar is being recorded. It will be uploaded to the NAMI Greater Cleveland YouTube channel sometime later this week. I'll also share these slides and some additional resources with you in a follow-up email after the webinar. Just a few things to note. Please be aware that this webinar is not eligible for CEUs, so please be aware of that in case that was part of why you were joining. Please also remember to observe good Zoom etiquette. Remember to remain muted throughout the presentation so we can limit background noise. Please also utilize the chat feature if you have questions. We'll wrap up by 1 o'clock today, and please also stick around with us before we wrap up to complete the evaluation for today's presentation. We do appreciate your honest feedback. Many of you have likely attended webinars with NAMI Greater Cleveland in the past. If you're a newcomer, please know that NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we at NAMI Greater Cleveland are happy to provide free and open to the general public support groups, educational programs, helpline services, and advocacy to improve quality of life for individuals living with mental illness and their families. So with that being said, I will hand it off to Kim Langley, who many of you may recognize from previous programs she's done for us, to introduce herself and get us started. Thank you all for being here.
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure, and thank you for coming. A very brief introduction. My master's degree is in education. My main wheelhouse for speaking is emotional intelligence, and that led me into all kinds of other topics that are related to emotional intelligence, and gratitude is one of them. So I've done a couple other topics for you, and it's always been such a lovely group. Matt knows that he can be Oprah Winfrey for me. So if you put something in the chat box that he feels he wants to stop me and throw it in there, that's fine. I'm well prepared, but I'm also informal, and there will be time for your questions and comments, and also your yeah buts. I look forward to your yeah buts, as long as they're respectfully delivered. So this topic today, my heavens, I mean, the way I grew up, gratitude wasn't even on the table. Do you know what I mean? Like, there might have been I grew up in a religious family, so we had some meal prayers and thank you prayers and bedtime prayers and stuff like that. But the idea of a gratitude practice as a way of life, that didn't really come to me until maybe 20 years ago. And I would say that, like most people, I was really in need of growing my gratitude muscle. And I've been trying to do that ever since. And I was laughing to myself before we got on, thinking, boy, good thing, because with the economic situation and the political tensions and the climate change, the whole 9 yards, I've really upped my gratitude practice to help me compensate for some of the worries that I have. And just for fun, I wanted to introduce you to Henrietta Poulet. And Henrietta Poulet was given to me by one of my dearest friends about a week ago, and she's my emotional support chicken. So, and very easy to care for. So if you're here today because you got one nerve left and the world is on it, you're in good company. Like, this is not a happy fizzies party. Oh, gratitude, it's so easy. You would just walk around all the time saying how wonderful everything is. Nope, even I need an emotional support chicken, when times get tough. But there is a lot of good research on the science of gratitude, if you can believe it. Originally, researchers were looking at hope, for example, as through a scientific lens, like how much can we say about hope and who has it and who doesn't, and what's authentic hope and what isn't, and so on. And turns out there's a lot we can discover about it. And then that morphed into also gratitude studies. So what I'm going to share with you today is very evidence-based and data-driven. It's not just a pep talk, all right? Okay, so the first thing is What good is gratitude? Well, I mean, it turns out that there's a whole mess of mental health benefits. That's not so surprising, but even physical health benefits to having a strong gratitude practice. And notice I'm talking about it as a skill because I don't believe that though some people are perhaps born with these really sunny personalities. We know that some of that's inherited, but less than 50% is inherited. And a lot of, for at least for me, who grew up with, I was lucky, people who loved me, but also people who were very depressed and anxious. It's been a real skill development kind of thing. So if you're here because you feel the lack of gratitude in your life, you can learn from my foolishness, and you will get better and better at it to the point where if you really practice and grow that muscle, even difficult situations will eventually you'll find something in it to be grateful for. Now, this does not mean we suppress our feelings, we stuff our feelings. This does not mean we don't grieve. What I'm trying to offer here is the idea that, unlike what many of us have been taught in our culture, gratitude and grief, gratitude and worry, gratitude and distress can exist at the same time. It doesn't have to be one or the other. So even in the middle of challenging things, one can find moments or half hour or an hour or a day of gratitude. So let's look at this infographic and notice that it's good for charity, which I think is going to be a challenge for all of us now to step up and do what we can for charity. Grateful people on average give 20% more time and money than people who aren't grateful. Psychologically, every 10 years, gratitude increases by 10%. So pat yourself on the back as you get decades older. Here you are. And you are, in fact, going to get better and better at this if you want to. Grateful people have a stronger bond with the local community. Grateful people tend to be less fearful. They're more likely to remember that there are still a lot of good people out there instead of emphasizing always those aspects of society which might make one fearful. Grateful people have 10% fewer stress-related illnesses. They're more physically fit and they have lower blood pressure. So if none of this previous has convinced you, there's a reason to build your gratitude. Happy people's income is roughly 7% higher. And it's not magic. It seems to be because people who can get along with other people who are legitimately happy. I'm not saying people who blow sunshine, because that can be, as you know, quite annoying when the happiness is inauthentic or when people are so positive that they have moved into a kind of toxic positivity. That's not what I'm talking about. But it appears that happy people are more likely to be assigned to teams that are challenging. They're a little more likely to be promoted, and to keep their jobs also. In terms of work, that's professional life. Now, personal life, friends are more satisfying in their relationships. I think if you think about it, what all of us really hope for is that when the end comes, there'll be loved ones around us who are going to miss us. And happy people are more likely to have those folks around them. And when you look at youth, you have kids with fewer fights and better grades. And the most grateful companies or countries are listed every year. And even though there's no time to talk about that this year, or today, I'm sorry, because we only have an hour, I really hope some of you will open a tab right now that says happiness rankings 2025, happiest countries, blah, blah, blah. It is so interesting to see what the common threads are among happiest countries. And the kind of bad news is that for many, many years, the United States wasn't even in the top 20. And I heard somebody told me it moved up a little bit into the top 20, but by no means are we the happiest group, even though we're the wealthiest group. So that takes some thinking about, right? Positive emotions can add up to 7 years to your life, and grateful teens are less likely to engage in at-risk behaviors. So if you can be as happy as is reasonable for your situation, you're actually modeling that for the people around you, You know how our grandma and grandpaps used to say, what goes around comes around. That's often the case with happiness, if not with family who might be struggling, then with friends or families of our own making, people that we take on to be like family to us. So Emily Dickinson's poem is justifiably popular and famous even to this day. And the most famous stanza of it is, hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. Now, I won't say that my song hasn't stopped from time to time. It has. It absolutely has. I think that's part of being human. But having hope as a goal, not wishful thinking. A wish is not hope. All right. Hope is it's really a decision in my view. It's a mindset. What can I make out of this that has some worth? Or one of my friends, and I love this, I learned it from him, often will say, how can I make this the best problem I ever had? That's an example of somebody who's living a pretty grateful life. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, oh boy, I hope I have some huge challenge so I can, kill myself growing into it, blah, blah, blah. But if you're alive, challenges are going to come. And if you can step back from your first grief, shock, horror, whatever our initial brain response of whoop, whoop, whoop usually is when something goes wrong, and eventually in a day, an hour, get to the point where you say, well, how can I make this the best problem I ever have? It changes your life, because then you start thinking, well, what do I need to learn? Who can I ask for help? What skills am I lacking that's making this so difficult for me? Et cetera, et cetera. All right. So now, of course, all this is noble talk, right? But I want to admit also that I have a lot in the common with this guy, and I bet some of you do too, because most of us are impatient. It's not human to want to feel good, and when we don't feel good, we can spiral down into ingratitude. So, have I ever found myself saying, everything happens to me? Well, yeah, not so much as I'm older, but because now I know I'm just like everybody else. And of course, things are going to happen to me. I don't ask why anymore. It's because I'm alive. But I am impatient, just like anyone is. On the other hand, uh, if we have some self compassion and we accept that we're going to be up and down, and that we keep working with our own brains to achieve more gratitude, more balance, more acceptance, more maturity, et cetera, et cetera, inner peace will come. Maybe not every moment of every day, but it will come. So, one of my pieces of advice, if you don't mind me giving some, is that we really deliberately open our heart and welcome to worthy mentors. In other words, look around for people either in your own life, and your community or your social organizations or your church, temple, uh, you know, um, if there's nobody there, then somebody online. Like I feel like Brene Brown is one of my worthy mentors. Anne Lamott is one of my worthy mentors. Sometimes my worthy mentors are authors or speakers or people who make YouTube videos. And that's a good thing, because that all reinforces the muscle building that I'm talking about. Meister Eckhart said, if the only prayer you said in your whole life was thank you, that would suffice. And I love that, because some of us feel guilty when we're not grateful or guilty when we're not happy. And instead of seeing that as a temporary condition and trusting that we will get to gratitude or to a prayer of thank you, we beat ourselves up while we're unhappy, which is what the Buddhists call the second arrow. The first arrow is the thing that happens to you. I wreck my car. The second arrow is I beat myself up because I feel so terrible that I wrecked my car. So now I'm piling on to an already difficult event. When I do have a choice to say, okay, this is going to be hard. I really can't afford another car, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm alive, or I didn't hurt somebody else. Or if I do have the money to fix it, I'm lucky I have the money to fix it, and so on. All right. So Bill Mayer said, every thought's a seed. If you plant crab apples, don't count on harvesting golden delicious. And I actually printed this. You're going to get a copy of these slides when the presentation is over. And one of my ways of growing is I find something that represents my area of growth, my growing edge, and then I find a quote that grabs it, or even just make a reminder to myself, and I hang it up where I'll see it every day. Some of you have heard me say this before, so forgive me. But at a time when I was really overwhelmed in my life, raising kids, working 60 hours a week, we didn't have a lot of money. It was crazy, crazy, crazy. And, I told you I grew up with anxious and depressed people. So it's easy for me to begin by spiraling down, then catch myself and level off. So I hung this on my dresser mirror for, I don't know, 6 months probably, until I felt like I really had it in my bones. And that's something you might want to do for yourself too. Um, I think one of the reasons that children's literature is good for us, and I will tell you that since the situation of the last couple of weeks with the economic troubles and so on, I've been reading more young adult literature and even some children's literature. I like a good murder mystery just like anybody else, and I enjoy all kinds of fiction. But when stress is high, I want to read something that reminds me that sometimes there's a happy ending. And that's probably one of the reasons for the enduring appeal of somebody like Pooh and Piglet. They know the simple truths and they remind us of them. So, another way that we know that from research that gratitude is really a benefit is research that's been done on keeping a gratitude journal, which any of us can do for the cost of a little stack of paper, versus winning the lottery, which probably none of us will ever experience. And if you see the trajectory here, I find it very empowering. I mean, would I like to win the lottery? Yeah, that'd be great, but I'm not counting on it. I bet you aren't either. So the satisfaction, the happiness increase goes way up when you first win the lottery, but then it shows a steady decline because that kind of wealth often comes with challenges. Family and friends want things from you when they don't get them. Sometimes lottery research shows lottery winners will often lose friends and family after they've won. And as one lottery winner I heard interviewed said, you can only own so many cars, so many suits, so many houses. And after a while, it gets as boring as anything else. Fascinating, right? And a Harvard study of happiness following, well, only men, because it started in the 30s, I think, but it's continued up to this day. So we have almost 100 years of these happiness studies of Harvard graduates showed that the thing that matters the most in the happiness of those Harvard graduates is not their education, not how smart they are, not how much money they made, not whether they were the president or vice president of this or that, but whether or not they had love in their lives. Now, I mean, that sounds like unicorns and rainbows, doesn't it? But this is hard science, not unicorns and rainbows. So we got to have the right tools for the right job. And a lot of times the right tool for the right job is gratitude. Now, I went to a presentation a while ago on the difference between letting it go and letting it be. And I want to talk about that for a minute. And if you're somebody who jots things down for consideration later on, this would maybe be worthwhile jotting down. I've often thought about letting go. Sometimes my prayer is, help me to let go of this wound, this hurt, this bias, and so on. And often, I feel that prayer has been heard. But what the speaker said about letting it go is that letting it go involves a kind of effort. Like, look at me, I'm letting it go. Whereas letting it be is less centered on the self and one's own effort and more centered on acceptance, not approval. Acceptance does not equal approval. If someone has wounded me or wronged me, if I'm a trauma survivor, It's wonderful. We know from the research and even from our own experiences that if we can forgive people, it's good for us. It might not matter to them, but it's good for us. But even if I can't forgive them, I can still let it be. It's the difference between letting it like gnaw away at me and cultivating the intention to live peacefully with this, whatever this thing is. One of my friends who's a counselor of people who've survived trauma, she says trauma is like a tattoo on your arm. When you first get it, it's really big and bold and it stands out against your skin. And if you work with it, or in this time I would say, if you let be some of what that trauma involved, little by little, she says the tattoo never goes away. It happened. It's always going to have happened, but it fades and it gets less and less a visible part of your life or an important part of your life. So I like that idea. I urge you to think about whether letting go and letting be would make a difference for you. And the reflection question that I put for you here, and feel free to jot things down if you want, is which aspects of my life would improve if I finally let it go, whatever it is, or let it be? They're both good things. I just feel like I'm trying to move into letting it be. Maybe it's the stage of my life too. So, blessings on your attempts to think about that one. It's been good for me anyhow. That's why I wanted to share it. Now, it's hard to be grateful in a consumer society because we are constantly bombarded with commercials and messages that tell us that we should be unhappy about this or that thing. So, if my teeth aren't white enough, if my makeup isn't right, if my chin is getting saggy, then I should spend money on this product to fix that, and then I'll be happier. But one of the things that's very helpful to remember, when I learned this statistic, it was a great relief to me. Studies show that people tend to post the top 5% of their lives on social media. So that means all of us are presenting kind of a curated vision of ourselves to the world. And that's okay. I mean, my sorrows are nobody's business. It's wearisome sometimes to, I don't have to post my troubles if I don't want to. But I should be aware that it's not just that we compare ourselves to what other people have or their vacations or what they do, their promotions. It's that we compare their outsides, their 5% carefully curated image, to our insides, what only we know. It could be causing us distress, worries, and so on. All right. So this guy is my mascot for remembering that everybody has insides that look like this sometimes. If there's nothing wrong with me, if my life involves some suffering, some blues, some moments that aren't, perfect joy. Plus, he makes me laugh. So when we feel like this, why not stop doing that? And I realize that I feel like this in comparison to others. Why not stop comparing? Comparison fuels an awful lot of economic activity, but it's pretty bad for your mental health. So, of course, I know this, but, I don't always remember, which is why I said what my guardian angel must look like at times. Oh, Kim, for the love of and so part of the muscle building that I'm talking about is deciding. That's what I mean by gratitude being a skill, not just a feeling, because happiness research, I think I've talked to some of you already about happiness research. If not, I would love to do that. But happiness research shows that happiness around the world generally consists of two main elements. There's lots of feeder elements, but two main elements, which are feelings of happiness and thoughts of satisfaction. Okay, feelings of happiness and thoughts of satisfaction. And American culture really puts the emphasis on feelings of happiness. Hence what I've just been saying about consumers societies bathing you in messages of inadequacy so that you will purchase more. All right. But we can, we're smart. We have brains in our heads and feet in our shoes, as Dr. Seuss says. We can decide to think critically about all those messages that we get and be grateful for what we have, which will lead to a lot more happiness. So even when, as my grandma used to say, even when the caca is hitting the fan, and you don't have a lot of feelings of happiness, it's almost always possible to have thoughts of satisfaction. Okay, today I'm kind of down and I'm doing the right thing. I'm taking care of my parent, or I'm visiting my grandmother with dementia, or I'm working hard to take care of my family. In some cultures, the main ingredient of happiness is thoughts of satisfaction. Feelings of happiness don't even get a lot of consideration in some cultures. So I think it's freeing to know that not everybody lives and thinks the way we do, and that it's okay to swim upstream and be different and not just get sucked in by cultural norms. So as part of this, I hung this quote up for myself for quite a while. Let go of people who dull your shine, poison your spirit, and bring you drama. Cancel your subscription to their issues. Now, this is a bold statement when I'm talking to NAMI, and I know it. You already know that my family put the fun in dysfunctional. So I'm not saying this blithely. I mean, sometimes you're caring for somebody who you really feel you have to care for, and they dull your shine and bring you drama. But if we have good boundaries, then we don't have a subscription to their issues. So I think boundary work is a spiritual endeavor and something that we can get better and better at, just like we can get better and better at gratitude practice. We could do a whole workshop on boundaries, but I hope you know what I mean. And if this is an aha for you, then I encourage you to do additional reading on caregiving and boundaries and how to keep yourself sane while you work with somebody who's challenging. Happy people take time to appreciate what others take for granted. Boy, that is so important. I'm going to say it again. This was another one of my hangups for many months in the house. Happy people take time to appreciate what others take for granted. So if you, okay, well, I probably told this story when I talked about optimism, but I'm going to tell it again because I know we have people here that didn't get to that workshop. I have a dear friend who had ALS, and she's my age, so young-ish, and she passed away from it. And of course, she had plenty of struggles, but I was privileged to, really be her friend until the end. And I remember saying to her one time when she couldn't speak anymore and our food had to be blended, and she was using one of those eye to board technologies in order to communicate. And I said to her, how do you stay grateful? Because she had been in AA, or not AA, I'm sorry, she had been in Al-Anon, and she had learned a lot about life and how to live it well from Al-Anon. And she brought those skills plus a robust spiritual spirit and gratitude practice to this terrible illness that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. So I said, well, how do you stay like mostly positive? And she said, well, honestly, I have my days, but I try not to make it a whole day. She said, like one of the therapists that she worked with said, you can go visit Pity City, but don't build a house there. I said, thank you, girlfriend. I'm taking notes. So another gratitude tip related to this one is the next time you pay a bill, write down something positive that the service or product has helped you accomplish by using it. It will teach you to shift your focus from money being taken to the value you're receiving. So, everybody likes to complain about taxes, especially at this time of the year, but it can help to reframe that as paying for streets, paying for street lights. I take my kids to the playground, et cetera, et cetera. That helped me anyway. I might want to moan about paying for electricity, but at least I have electricity. There are some people in sub-Saharan Africa that are lucky to have 5 hours of electricity a week. 5 hours a week. Think about what that would do to your life. Matt, did you pop up because you want to say something or somebody wants me to say something? Okay, glad you're there. So it was also kind of a kick in the pants for me when one of my spiritual directors said this to me. Well, someone else is happy with less than you have, because like many of us, I'm kind of brainwashed into thinking, oh, this one's traveling here, that one's buying a house, or this one has a blah, blah, a thing, a thing maybe that I don't have, or an opportunity that I don't have. There's no way to live, and I have given it up as much as I can. Sometimes I have to give it up more than once. My dad, who was in AA, used to say everything I ever handed over to God had claw marks on it, which I love. Everything I ever handed over to God had claw marks on it. So does that mean occasionally there aren't claw marks when I hand over? Somebody else has something that makes them happy. I don't have it. Yeah, sometimes. But the point is you hand it over. You don't let it poison your joy, and you remind yourself what you do have. If you hear yourself visiting pity city, and that often sounds like everything happens to me, or why did this happen to him, nothing ever goes right. I have learned, actually through the help of a therapist, to kind of hold up my hand as a stop sign, or mentally if I'm somewhere where I can't go like this, and say to myself, wait, 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 wait. Always, never, everything. Is that true? When you got up this morning and you flipped the switch, did the lights come on? Did you have running water? Etc. I mean, there are so many things to be grateful for. And it's unbelievable. And yet we can delude ourselves, and I mean delude ourselves about the badness of things. And there's a tendency in women, I hate to say anything bad about us because I think we're tough. And the research shows that women ruminate on the badness of things longer than the average man does. That has pluses and minuses, but I'm sharing that because when I first learned that research, I was like, And there are some people, it's not all women, of course, it's a bell curve, I'm not trying to be sexist here. There are some people who ruminate so long on the badness of something that a new bad thing has happened by the time they're ready to let that first bad thing go. So, that's a recipe for misery. So one of the books I highly recommend, you can get it on audio, you can get it as an ebook. It's been in print for quite a while and is much beloved. I think many of you would like it since you're here today. Is this one called Gratefulness, the Heart of Prayer, an approach to life in fullness. And part of what I love about this book, it's written by a brother, a religious brother, Brother David Steindl-Rast. He's Austrian. If you ever hear him on YouTube, he has this very charming accent. And I encourage you to look on YouTube. There are some fantastic gratitude videos on YouTube that you can learn or reinforce what we're saying from. But his book is marvelous, and there's no guilt tripping. Like I grew up with plenty of religious guilt. I'm not really in favor of it. But it's not that kind of a book. It really is a book that expands your capacity for gratitude. And he practices what he preaches. So he and others who love his work have started the Network for Grateful Living. So I hope some of you will jot that down or open up a tab. The Network for Grateful Living. And they have really become a vibrant and robust group. I was around when they started as a little movement, and it's huge now because I think people instinctively recognize that gratitude is often the missing link in the life of their spirit, however you think of spirituality. So this Gratefulness Network has an email that you can sign up for, and it comes a couple times a week. It doesn't clog up your email box. I'm sure it's not every day. But when it comes, I always read it before I get out of bed to remind me there are lots of good people and things going on in the world. They also offer free or very low cost or for a donation classes. Like they just finished a 6-week class on how to build gratitude into your life. And it's just a huge pick me up and skill builder. So that would be a super way for you to keep it going after our session here so that it stays alive and really takes root. Louise Hay, who has I think she's gone now, but she um, made her mark in the recovery community and then spread out to the entire mental health community. And she said, "You have been criticizing yourself for years and it hasn't worked. Try approving of yourself and see what happens." So part of gratitude practice is being grateful when I get it right, or when I don't blow up, or when I use my boundaries and stay calm in the face of whatever. Um, it's very easy to zero in on when I fail. But part of gratitude practice is acknowledging, okay, sometimes I fail. Next time I'm going to do this, or what am I going to learn from that, or how can I do better? But it also is with no guilt or shame or inordinate pride, just being able to step back once in a while and go, dang, I'm good. I look at me. I didn't lose my temper. I thought before I spoke. I was responsive instead of reactive. Huzzah, you know? So that's a piece that maybe sounds like not a biggie, but you know what I've found in my own life? It's a biggie. And I bet it is for some of you, would be for some of you. So I'll move on, but I want to say that's important just because we're going through it quickly. And then another author that I really love, I don't know if any of you know this author, he was an Episcopal priest, a marvelous preacher, and a prolific writer, Frederick Buechner. That's how you say his last name, Buechner. And he's self-deprecating and funny and smart at the same time. The same qualities I admire in Anne Lamott, who's like my informal spiritual director. I read her books and her articles online, and I always get something out of them. But Buechner said, the grace of God means something like, here is your life. You might never have been, but you are, because the party wouldn't have been complete without you. So even on your lowest days, um, it's good to remember this. It's a kind of modern version of the lilies of the field, maybe. I just love it. Obviously, I hung this up over my desk for a while. So gratitude is really an excellent medicine. This artist made this graphic saying take a dose every morning, may cause shifts in perspective, may cause feelings of abundance and decreased feelings of fear and anxiety. And that's certainly my experience. I'd like to pause for a minute now and give you a chance to put some things in the chat box. What's your experience? Like, how do you feel about what I'm saying about gratitude being a skill and that we build it like a muscle, that it's not just a feeling? Because most people you talk to are going to think of it as a feeling, just like most people think of happiness as feelings of happiness. But now you know thoughts of satisfaction, which requires a little mental discipline, is equally important. Have you yourself experienced shifts in perspective as your gratitude practice grows? Or as you watched somebody else's gratitude practice grow? Sometimes it's our mentor who really turns on the light for us, and we're still fumbling around in the half light, and that's okay because eventually we get there. So anybody want to put something in the chat box that would enrich us all, or disagree with something I have to say, have had to say, or add to it? I'm not the only person here who knows something about living.
Yeah, so some folks have added comments here saying that
Good.
gratitude involves mindfulness and is
Yes.
a big picker-upper.
Yes.
Gratitude gets easier and becomes natural with practice.
Amen.
Gratitude is muscle memory and is so important to self-care and satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
Gratitude definitely shifts my perspective. When I journal and express gratitude, it shines a little more light to my life.
Lovely. Thank you. And if I remember correctly, one of the handouts, because we have a short time together, I sent several handouts. And one of them is on how to keep a gratitude journal. So if you've never done that, that might be a marvelous practice to adopt after today. And it does not have to be a big involved thing. When I first started gratitude journaling, I had a notebook that was about this big because I didn't want something that intimidated me. And it was small enough to sit on my nightstand with a pen tucked in it. And before I went to bed, I would write down three things I was grateful for. Now, this is a practice that has been much researched. I think I have a slide on it. And no, maybe not. Um, uh, but if you Google gratitude journal, or if you look on YouTube for people talking about it, you'll get all kinds of ideas. But it's just a simple way to do it is three things every night that you're grateful for. And what the research showed when social scientists had people do this was that they had taken kind of a happiness, gratitude, hope assessment at the beginning of the study. And then they took another one 2 weeks later. And the people who did not keep the gratitude journal were pretty much the same. But on a scale of 7, the people who kept the gratitude journal went up 2 points. That's a lot on a scale of 7. So gratitude promotes mindfulness. Mindfulness promotes gratitude. I mean, it's good stuff. So I'm going to leave some time for questions and comments. And but I want to end with a poem by Derek Walcott that I really love. And it's called Love After Love. And here it is. Love after love. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, "Sit here, eat." You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, but who knows you by heart. Bring down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. So I think this poem's about a lot of things, but one of them, in my view, is gratitude. It's so easy as I get older to think, gosh, I'm getting older. This doesn't work. That creaks. I'm tighter than I used to be. What happened to my energy? It's really easy to do that. But what one of my mentors shows me is sit, feast on your own life. I'm so ridiculous and not ashamed to be ridiculous at this age. I want to turn into a holy fool that I will thank my knees for carrying me for so many years. Or I had thyroid cancer, so I had my thyroid out last December. And the morning of the surgery, I put my hand on my thyroid and I said, thanks for carrying me all these years. And I really meant it. I really meant it. And then I was grateful that the cancer had been discovered kind of by accident, actually, because I needed a. So there's always, always, always something you can be grateful for without falling into toxic positivity. If you're interested in more on this toxic positivity, there's plenty of good resources out there on that. And I do speak about it in the spirituality and science of optimism workshop that I gave for NAMI, which I'm sure is up somewhere, isn't it, Matt? So I'm going to be quiet, and that gives us time for discussion. What do you got, guys? What do you think?
And just seeing a lot of gratitude in the chat for
Aw.
the poem. Um, there's a few other notes. It isn't that we don't know how to have gratitude, it's that we have to put it into practice.
Mm.
Shared. Gratitude helps me see beyond me and focus on the bigger picture. That helps me to make adjustments and not excuses.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
And there was something else here. I found that having a gratitude accountability buddy to simply exchange the gratitude journals was super helpful in making that practice become sustainable.
That is so true. When I first started learning some of these skills some years back, I asked a friend to be an accountability buddy. And I mean, I love my husband and my family, but they're not always the easiest to get support from for something that's so close to your own heart. So I asked one of my good friends, and she called me every Friday at a certain time and would say, "Okay, here's your check-in. Like, what did you do? What were you grateful for? What did you do for self-care? Tell me a time you were self-compassionate." There were like just two or three things that she would grill me on, and then I would return the favor, and it made a huge difference. So thank you for saying that. And yeah, you're right. It's not just a feeling; it's something we have to put into practice. Anybody else?
Just want to bring everyone's attention. I did put the link to the poem in the chat if you want
Thank
to
you.
look at it again from Derek Walcott. Also, I put the link to the survey in the chat. We have a new survey system. It's all just one single integrated survey. For type of program you participated in today, please select psychoeducation/educational session. Yeah, any more questions or comments? And yes, as Kim mentioned, Kim has done several other webinars for us in the past, most of which, if not all, have been recorded and are uploaded to the NAMI Greater Cleveland YouTube channel, including the Spirituality and the Science of Optimism program that Kim just mentioned. So, yeah, just again, seeing a lot of appreciation for um, this program. Yeah, I think
Well,
it came at
thank
the right
you. Well,
came
thank
at the
you to
right
Matt
time.
too
Yeah.
for asking me to do it because I it changed my life and I love talking about it. And if you're a beginner at gratitude practice, you can get online and search for a gratitude self-assessment because as I said, there is a lot of science behind much of what I said to you today. And so sometimes it helps to get a baseline for your own gratitude, um, like where I'm at now, and then go back in 6 months after developing the muscle and be able to see how it's growing in you. So that's another resource apart from things that you could stream or read or the handouts that I sent. There are some pretty good gratitude assessments online. All right. Well, should we wrap it up then? I hate to do that if anybody's sitting there wanting to say anything, but if not, it's okay. You could
Yeah.
you could have it would give you 10 minutes to start looking at the handouts.
Right. I think we can wrap it up and
Okay.
hope everyone has a great day.
Yeah,
Grateful
me
day.
too. A
Thank,
grateful day. Yes. Oh, my
All right.
pleasure. It was a joy to be here with you.
thank you. Bye.
Blessings, everybody.
Mhm.